I mean, let's talk about anxiety for a second. And I know I'm preaching to the choir I know there's going to be guys listening who have either experienced anxiety or maybe suffer from anxiety. I've had anxiety too at many points. I don't mean like approach anxiety, like you get nervous to talk to a girl. I mean anxiety where you're paralyzed. It's like almost a panic attack, but not a panic attack, right? And I say it like that because panic attacks are one thing, anxiety attacks are one thing. But what about just the anxiety one feels, which is so intense on its own, just even before you get to panic attack, anxiety attack stage, just this uncomfortableness in your body. Uh, you're unable to think about anything going on in the moment because you're so caught up in your head. And a lot of people, to tame that anxiety, to come full circle here, might be drinking, might do drugs, or escape in any other way, whatever, that's a lot of times where addictions come from. Again, I'm not an addiction specialist either, but I've studied things like that. So it's just like that uncomfortable feeling. And the fact that you might have that, or one might have that with a girl, just from the fact that you're like, what are they doing? Who are they talking to? Like, I also know this because I have clients that I work with, that I coach, that have this anxious attachment. So I have to tell them, because I see the signs of it. I'm like, hey, I think you have anxious attachment. And then I tell them, of course, I'm not a psychologist. I really highly recommend, the first sign I see it, I'm like, I think you should be talking to a psychologist. Of course, I can help you too, but seeing a psychologist is going to help with this more deeper issue here. And one of the ways that I see it come out is I'll be texting with a client and they'll say to me something along the lines of, oh, she's not answering her text. I bet you she's with a guy. They're making up all these stories, right? Like, she's probably doing this X, Y, and Z, all fearing from abandonment. And this will occur after maybe just an hour of the girl not texting them back.
Hmm.
And then boom, trigger, anxiety, abandonment. It's a really uncomfortable feeling. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts on it. My first thought is that, I think a certain element of that is always going to be there, right? Like we can't just completely get rid of it. It's even when I was dating my partner now, we've been together for almost 2 years. And I still had it's like, is it excitement? Is it anxiety? Right? Because they can feel sort of similar. So I always tell people, the goal is not to get rid of your anxious attachment, right? It's sort of how to manage it, um, which is another topic, but, just throwing it in for myself. And what I always recommend people is really somatic things like meditation can go a really long way. Um, and so the other thought I had was that, um, sometimes certain people can bring that out in us. So if it's an hour, right, we could be like, okay, that might be on you, right? Like an hour is not that long. Let's like chill out for a second. But sometimes it can be a much longer time. It could be like a 6 hour, 8 hour, maybe a whole day they didn't text you, right? And that could be very anxiety inducing. Well, that's a sort of situation where I would be like, hey, okay, well, just that's more information that you're dealing with someone who's gonna go a whole day without talking to you. And does that work for you, right? So there's a difference between an hour, right? And how do you manage that anxiety while they might text you back right then, you know what I mean? And then that relieves the anxiety, and in that case, if that's the case where, the person is pretty much showing up in a healthy, uh, consistent way, but the anxiety is within you, that's where the sort of somatic things come in. And really, my suggestion is, it's, maybe sounds kind of girly, but for me, it always comes down to self love and self care.
No, I mean, it's funny that you say kind of girly, because I know that's not the conversation that men have. But I do say it. I actually say it quite a bit here about, loving yourself. I don't know any other better way to put it. But that is the idea, coming down to the idea of self-esteem and respecting yourself. So I'm curious, if there's guys listening right now who are going through it, like, what are some of your tips and what they can do, and more specific kind of practical stuff, like what can they do to help with this? Of course, I would always say, see a therapist, um, work with you, but also what can they do on their own?
So like I was saying, I think it makes a world of difference if you if you meditate for 5 minutes in the morning, not meditate while you're waiting for the text message because you're going to be crazy in that moment. But if you meditate earlier, sort of preemptively, it's going to make a difference later on. And there's lots of different ways that people can sort of practice that. So in terms of the self-love stuff and what to do in that moment is, I'm sure you talk about this on your podcast all the time, is like, if my life is good, if I'm good in my life, I'm not going to be letting someone else dictate um how I'm feeling. So really sort of taking that power back. Yes, I'm interested in this person. Yes, I want them to text me back, but I'm working right now. I'm going to work out. I got to go buy groceries, right? Like that's what I mean by self-love and self-care is like staying in your own lane and being really clear about where you are in that phase of dating. There's a certain level of appropriateness. We're strangers, we're acquaintances, we're friends, we're intimate, right? There's like, you gotta, you shouldn't skip the steps. And so it is normal for someone to not text you back for 3 hours on a work day, right? And sort of having that voice and not being judgmental, but sort of talking ourselves off the ledge and being like, you're fine, right? You have a roof over your head. You're working right now. Eh, if you even need to sort of um, I recommend this to clients sometimes when they're really struggling with the text messages is tell yourself you're going to look at it at noon, right? You check it in the morning. Hey, good morning. Hope you're having a good day. You don't check it until the afternoon, right? And then you look at it on your lunch break and then you look at it later at night and sort of have these designated times where you allow yourself to look at it. And just being conscious that it's coming up, right? Oh, I can't look at it till noon. It's 11:40. I've got 20 minutes till I can look at it. There's that thought again. Okay, focus. I'm right now, where am I? I'm talking to this person. I need to be present, right? And just coming back to what you need to do in that moment. You have a life outside of this person is really what it comes down to.
Right. I like that. You have a life outside of this person. And that's, I think, the whole thing is when you don't feel like you have your own thing going on and you just don't respect yourself or love yourself, like yourself, you're looking to that other person for all those things. And then it becomes an addiction because they're not there to fulfill that, maybe in those moments between text messages or seeing them. And you feel like hell. And that's what causes that anxiety.